Yeah.
Oh man, so man, like so the combine started. The combine is done. We're in that next stage where lion season before the whole thing starts. Like, what are your takeaways from the whole, like, from a defensive line point of view? So who are some of the names you like from this next class?
Yeah, the defensive line, I think, is a very interesting position group. I think just overall this year in the NFL, I think you had some, key defensive linemen get released in free agency. You have guys like Jonathan Allen, Von Miller yesterday, Jackson and San Francisco, and a few other names to mention that are edge rushers too. But I think this class is very rich with both interior defensive linemen and edge rushers, which creates a very positive situation for teams where we don't have to spend the money in free agency on some of these big name guys. We can, draft and develop talent or try to find some NFL ready guys. Um, Obviously, I think,
Can I ask you one question real quick?
please.
Do you in your estimation, like, is it a big knock, right? Is it a big knock for a guy to have not played at a big school for defensive line? Are you worried about the kid from Marshall? Are you worried about, or does the measurables, does the explosiveness, when you get the results from the combine, does that tell the story enough for you to be like, okay, this guy can play at the next level?
I'm really glad that you asked that question because I think this is where people get lost every year. Does it matter if you played at a big school or not? No. I say watch the tape and let the tape tell you if this guy is
Can
ready
play,
for
yeah.
NFL talent or not. So Mike Green, as an example, like Mike Green is Brian Burns reincarnated. Okay, like that's Mike Green, shot out of a cannon, extreme athleticism, some of the most insane burst I can remember seeing in a very long time from a college standpoint. He
Mhm.
played at Marshall, right? So some of those tackles that he's going against, some of those guards that he's going against on the backside, when he's trying to, follow through across the line of scrimmage, might not be NFL guys, right? But tackle who set a really good edge, he had a really good pass set, had nice knee bend, really good positioning, and Mike Green put a spin move on him that sent him into the laundry room. Okay. And that's Ohio State. So I think if you can see the athleticism or the talent that that one particular player has on tape, I think translate into the NFL, that's what you use to make your decision. Not, well, what did he test? What are his measurables? Or did he play at a big school or did he not play at a big school? It's just watch that tape and
Yeah.
try to do a good job of figuring out if you think that that skill set translates into the NFL.
Yeah.
Shamar Stewart is a polarizing guy that we'll get into where he played at a big school,
Yep.
but I don't see a lot of the things on tape that would lead me to believe that he's going to have a more successful career than other guys in the draft.
Yeah, that's good. Good point. Because I know, like, for me, if people ask always, there's a tight end, the tight end out of Bowling Green I like a lot. And
Oh,
going,
you're talking about Hal Fannin.
yeah, I
Oh
love
my
him. I like
gosh.
him a lot. And then people were like, "Oh, but he played at Bowling Green." But I'm like, but did you see him against Penn State? Did you see
Yeah.
him against some of the top competition? Because when he did,
Yeah.
he was cooked. He cooked them, and he's the only group. He's the only offensive weapon they really have. They have a talented offensive. The defensive coordinator is getting one of the highest paid defensive coordinators in all college football, and he couldn't stop him either. So, with
Hmm.
superior talent. So, if you can ball, you can ball. So I just want. I mean, I just want to know, where, I mean, because everybody's path is different. Like last year, I loved, I remember just looking at the tape of Toledo's tape, and I don't know. I remember, I think it was like late night, and I called solo, and I was like, dude, have you seen Quentin Mitchell? Like, have you seen this corner dude out of Toledo? And I fell in love with his tape as well. So, um, continue on with, as far as that goes. I know there's a guy, and I want to get to a guy who I know you like. And
Sure.
it's a Jalen Walker. Um,
Oh my God.
so, like, he's a guy who is, I think that I know you do like him a lot, and I think that he's a guy who is versatile. I mean, Georgia is known for putting people out, in the NFL as far as the defensive line goes. Can you talk about his ability to get to the edge, and even drop in coverage and do all kind of different things? He was mirroring the quarterback sometimes too. He does a lot of different things for Georgia.
Yeah, he really kind of acts like a joker for Georgia. If you think about it from, from a box perspective, he can do it all. Yeah, he can play true linebacker, drop into coverage, get active in the run game, and but he can also line up on the edge and pass rush as a true pass rusher. So you think about guys like Jamie Collins, you think about a guy like, Donta Hightower, who started off as a true linebacker and then really kind of converted into an edge rusher towards the latter part of his career when coach was looking at the tape one day and said, you know what, like I think this guy's a premier pass rusher. We should probably just put him on the line full time. So he's got that ability. He had a really good game against Texas where he was lined up against Kelvin Banks and made him look like a little boy. He had a couple of sacks against Banks. He had multiple pressures. And I think there was one play in particular where he even caused an interception off of one of his pressures. He absolutely single-handedly wrecked that Texas game by
Mhm.
himself on that one side. You talk about Calvin Banks being a premier left tackle prospect in this draft. Jalen Walker made him look like he didn't belong in the top 15. I mean, it was really that bad of a game for it was either that bad of a game for him or Jalen Walker's, who I think he is, which is a very, very physical and explosive player. He's got tremendous instincts. So whether he's playing off-ball linebacker and he's reading the play, keying in on the run, or he's lined up on the edge, and pass rushing, he's got the power and explosiveness to be active in the play regardless of where he's lined up, right? So, Micah Parsons is one of those guys who played a little bit of off-ball linebacker, a little bit on a defensive line. So he's not Micah Parsons. I just think they're two totally, completely different players. But I think Jalen Walker is one of the most instinctual defensive football players in this entire draft. You can tell that this guy understands the game that he's playing, but he also has the physical ability to be a serious, and I'm telling you, we can get into it. I mean, a serious disruptor in the pass rush game and a really good linebacker who can cover and be active in the run
For
game.
those who just joined us, we appreciate you listening to the space. It's Not Nonsense does do a bunch of different spaces, especially I think on Saturday you're doing with the draft with Jack. But is that week?
Jack
Is
Sperry,
that
yeah.
weekly? So you can check him out there. And then I do the Put on Raiders podcast. I do the Student Body Right USC podcast, and I also do the Signal Caller podcast. We talk about quarterbacks in the draft. So definitely check me out there. If we have not if you have not followed us, go ahead and follow us, if you will, and you get some good draft stuff before April comes as well. So let's see here. So where do you stand? Like I like Carter a lot, and I think the thing I do like about him a lot is just the physical toughness as well too, because these guys, some of these guys shut down if they're or they ask out of games if they're hurt. And he's playing for that. He's playing for a national championship, and it meant something to him. So you fail a lot on the defensive line. So you have to be able to take failure and then just keep going, because there's times where you get double teamed, you getting chipped all the time, like you're not gonna get to the quarterback, but you have to keep that motor going. And when I see Abdul Carter, I see a motor. I see a guy who played hurt to try to win a national championship. I see him just, I mean, obviously they don't give that number to anybody at Penn State. I do like him. I do like him. And I do think he's probably, for me at least, I like him as could possibly the best player in this draft.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought up Abdul Carter, because I think it's one of those situations where you have a really, really good player. Some people are throwing out the word generational. Everybody knows at least his baseline is he is a great football player.
Yes.
But I think a lot of the things that made me fall in love with Abdul Carter are a lot of the things that nobody really talks about. Just real quick before you get into that, just so you know, Patrick Pucci, who's in the listeners right now, he's actually the guy that set me up with Jack Sperry to do the spaces, the draft spaces, and the NFL content spaces that we do on Saturday. And he also has a space every Tuesday and every Friday with NFL rumors where they cover, the latest NFL news. So in this one space here, not only do you have, Dwayne, where he's, diving into the Raiders, diving into college football, and diving into the NFL on his YouTube channel and on spaces, you have me also doing spaces as well, covering draft content, and then you have, current events in the NFL with Patrick Pucci as well. So you have basically all of your NFL needs covered in this one space right here, through some of the people that we have in here. So it's great. But just going back to Abdul Carter again, and some of the things that made me fall in love with him that nobody talks about, you nailed one of them, which is his toughness. That was one of the most incredible displays of toughness that I've seen in a really long time from a college football player. He had one arm that entire game. Okay, his shoulder was completely shot. It was clearly he clearly had a brace on it. It was taped up to the max. He was pass rushing on one shoulder that entire
Mm-hmm.
game, forced an interception off of a pressure in the first quarter alone. Okay,
Crazy.
he had another pressure in a key. I don't know if you remember the key 2 minute drive in the first half where Steve Angeli had to come in, right, and basically run that 2 minute drive because what's his
Mhm.
name got hurt.
Yeah.
But he had a pressure on that 2 minute drive. And then the following play after the pressure actually stacked Steve Angeli to, basically, take them out of range to kind of go for it there. So he was an absolutely, I would say if you go back and watch the national championship game, he was not the national championship game, the semi. If you go back and watch the semi, he was one of the best. He was probably the best player on the field in that
Yeah.
entire game. He's probably the best player on the field. Um, I would say the one thing that I don't really hear anybody talk about is he is exceptional at diagnosing plays. Like he's a very smart football player. Like everybody sees him, he's a pass rusher, he's very athletic, he's slender. He's got that build where people look at him and they go, "Oh man, this guy's going to be a great pass rusher." But the one thing that I always notice about this guy is he is constantly trying to identify where the play is going and where the football is. Okay, and then from there is he has a really good job of understanding his leverage against the play and making sure that he's keeping himself in a position to stay active in the play regardless of which direction the ball goes. So he's a very smart football player with his eyes always on the backfield. He is always looking in the backfield to try to figure out what is happening in the play. And I think that that's one of the things that goes very unnoticed because we're all just focused on the pressures and the sacks that he generates with his elite athleticism and bend.
Good player. Good player. Yeah, like I said, they were to me in that game. The game, I mean, just that game was. I mean, Penn State should have beat Notre Dame. But hey, that's what it is. That's James Franklin.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there. James Pierce, Tennessee, edge. A lot of boards have him as the third best edge. Any thoughts on him? I haven't been able to dive into him yet. But what are your thoughts about him going forward here?
I haven't taken an extremely deep dive into him. I mean, I can definitely co-sign a lot of what we know, right? Which is he is in one of the most incredible athletes in this entire draft. He ran faster than I think every single tight end in this draft. He ran faster than I think some of the running backs in this draft. He's an athletic outlier. What I will say is there are so many off the field concerns. There are so many issues that came out of that locker room to the point where I heard a report that the team was relieved to find out that he was going to be entering the draft and no longer be on the team because he was he basically had one foot out the door and had an I don't care attitude about how he was carrying himself during the season. So look, he if he checked out from a character perspective, this is a top 10 player. I would go so far as to say he would unanimously be the 1B to Abdul Carter in this draft, right?
Okay.
He is a freak. He would go over Mason Graham. He would go over Will Campbell. He would go over Tyler Warren. He would go over Membu probably. I mean, this guy would be a top 10 pick, no doubt.
Okay.
But
Oh,
he's
wow.
got character, big, big, big character issues, and for those reasons, I think it's going to push him down draft boards. But if there's one thing that we know for certain, it's Philadelphia is probably going to trade up and draft this guy. So
Yes.
he'll probably be a Philadelphia Eagle.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a superstar GM. You don't see that very often, but they definitely have a superstar GM. You mentioned the name. I mentioned the name. That I think it's become like kind of like a kind of a controversial name now to a certain extent. I think two guys in this draft are like a little bit. as far as the line play goes, a little bit, on that controversial side would be Mason Graham and the LSU tackle. Well, is Mason Graham the best interior defensive tackle in this draft? I listen. He has good tape. He's doing it again. He did it in the Big Ten. He also, I mean, he's playing on the line with some good players too. But like, what's your stance? Because I think it seems like everybody has a different stance
Yeah,
with Mason Graham, especially when they saw him standing next to Stacey Dales at the combine.
yeah,
They were like, wait a minute, like this
yeah,
guy's this guy's a DT and they're gonna be a good DT in the NFL.
yeah. Yeah. And for what it's worth, he's 6'3", 320, so he's not the tiniest guy ever, right? But
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
think, he's definitely of a smaller frame. He's kind of he almost looks shorter than he is because he's so stocky.
yeah.
So I
And
think
Stacey Dales is
some
not short, by the way. So she yeah
right,
yeah
right,
yeah.
right,
So just so
right,
people know
right,
that,
right.
yeah, she's not.
Right, right, right. No, no, but believe me, point taken there, right?
Yeah,
But I think the glaring concern is, 24 reps on the bench. I think there was a wide receiver that actually put up more reps than him on the bench press. And I think if we take a step back and look at the totality of the defensive interior draft pool that we have, there's a guy by the name of Kenneth Grant that I, heard Jack Sperry mention yesterday was probably his favorite defensive interior lineman. So when you take a step back and you look at the situation, you say, okay, we have Kenny Grant, who some people are saying is one of the top two, top three defensive interior linemen in this draft, but Mason Graham is unanimously the number one interior defensive lineman in this draft. It's like, well, which one is true, and how much did one play into the other? I think when you look at a guy like Mason Graham, he's got a really, really phenomenal finesse package for a defensive interior lineman. I think you saw that a lot at Michigan. He was constantly, being a disruptive force in the backfield, mostly in the passing game, but would get involved in the run game. I mean, I've seen him work through a double team or two. I've also seen him get completely washed out of a play on a double team or two. Now, I'll never fault a player for getting washed out of a play on a double team, but if you're a defensive interior lineman, what that tells me is we have to have a conversation about setting a better anchor and trying to get better leverage, within the play so that you're not getting washed out as a key piece there in the run game. But look, he's a really good gap defender, is what I can say about him. He's a
hmm
smart player. He understands his leverage on that defensive interior line and where he needs to be in order to remain involved in any given play. I think when you look at a guy like Derek Harmon from Oregon, he's a
hmm
tremendous athlete that explodes into the backfield, but he has no gap integrity and he's constantly over pursuing, so he's missing tackles and not being involved in a play. Whereas Mason Graham has finesse, a little bit less explosiveness, but he's constantly involved in the backfield because he's not over pursuing and
He's
he's maintaining
consistent.
that gap integrity. He's
Just
consistent,
he's
right?
consistent. Yeah.
Consistent. But now, if you're asking me if I think unanimously he's the second defensive lineman, which would include edge rushers for us, off the board, I don't think he should be. Um, I think it's possible that he will be. What he reminds me of is like when I first heard about him, I was like, I feel like people are telling me about Ed Oliver, and then when I started watching him, he reminds me of, I don't know if you remember Geno Atkins
Yes, I
for the
do.
Cincinnati
Yeah,
Bengals.
Bengals.
Okay, clearly Geno Atkins, all pro defensive tackle, insane pass rusher, insane finesse, insane bull rush, really good in the run game. He was phenomenal. He's not Geno Atkins, but he does play like Geno Atkins with no bull rush. So if you imagine Geno Atkins and moving his strength bar in Madden from like a 90 down to like a 74, 75, that's Mason Graham. Okay. So what people see with Mason Graham is good fundamentals, good technique, good finesse for an interior pass rusher, ability to, fill out his frame and get stronger, and the art of the possible, which is if this guy can develop some power, can we get, a Geno Smith light or a Geno Smith type 2.0 player? So I see the vision with him, but I wouldn't draft him inside of the top 10 if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes that does make sense. Um, Walter Nolan, part of that Ole Miss defense that led the nation in sacks. I thought that well, I I like him a lot. So like you talked about Graham, and Graham is a guy who might be okay. He is the most consistent, but then you have other guys who might make the flashier plays that make highlight reels and stuff like that. Where does Walter Nolan fall into that place? 'Cause I from what you read and you watch sometimes that not he's not necessarily going to be a guy who ends up busting it on every single play.
Yeah. You look at Walter Nolan is he's fun to watch. He is a rocket ship. He is 6'4", 290. He's shot out of a cannon on every single play. The guy has, in my opinion, just based off of all the defensive linemen that I've watched so far, he's got the best, longest, and most consistent motor of any player that I've probably watched, other than my favorite player, which is Nick Scorton, who we can get into later. But his motor is indomitable. He does not stop moving his feet and pushing forward. With all of that being said, he has absolutely zero bag. Okay, he has zero pass rush bag. He'll push forward, right, and set an anchor and drive through his feet. And I've seen him push a defensive line back, but I don't see the moves behind it to go from just pushing a guy back to throwing a guy down or swatting him to the side or spinning around him or juking around him to get to the ball carrier or the quarterback in this case. Um, like he literally is basically your Ed Oliver,
Yeah.
right? But the one thing that I think that elevates Walter Nolan for me, despite the fact that he doesn't have a bag, is he has ferocious hands. Like he is nasty in the pocket. His hands are constantly moving. He's constantly trying to swat. I just think he needs to develop a little bit more of a bag after the initial punch. His initial punch is incredible. We need to develop something on top of that. And if he can do that, I think Walter Nolan has it in his range of outcomes to be the best interior lineman to come out of this draft.
Yeah,
But
I
he's
think
got to
so.
develop that, or else, he's just
Yeah.
going to be a jag who explodes into the backfield every now and then.
I'll let you. I mean, we're gonna go 10 more minutes, and then we're open up the floor for some comments and questions and stuff like that. If you want to, is anybody else you want to spotlight? I kind of I don't want to hog the spotlight here. Go ahead.
No, you're completely fine. If you have anybody that you want to spotlight, you're totally fine. I think my deep and unwavering love for Nick Scorton will not be denied. Whether it's now or later in the space, I will have my moment to talk about him. But
Go
yeah,
do
I
it
mean,
now.
well, oh, yeah, Nick Scorton. He's like I think he's my favorite player. From a pure edge standpoint, he's got a really good base. 6'4" guy. He plays a lot. Well, he's 6'3". I mean, some sites have him at 6'4", but he's like 6'2" and a quarter, 6'3", right? So he's a little shorter, I guess, and he's built really well. Like he's a strong guy. He plays a little bigger than his size, I would say. He's really, really good at setting the edge in the run game. He's, a pretty solid gap defender. I think there are times where he can get lost. I think there are definitely times where he can get washed out. I think every defensive lineman has bad plays, right? Every
Yes, yes.
defensive lineman has bad plays, but this guy is consistent. And the one thing that I'll tell you about Nick Scorton that maybe you're not going to see in all of the draft guides that you read through is Nick Scorton loves football, and you can tell when you watch him play. He has got a motor on him, and he's actively trying to be involved in every single play. So, in other words, if he's pass rushing the quarterback and the quarterback throws the ball into the flat, do you know what he does? He turns around and runs full speed into the flat. Right? If he notices that a tight end is breaking off the line for a tight end screen and he reads the play, do you know what he does? He turn around and runs for the tight end at full speed. And when he has to drop back into the passing game, he's actively screaming towards his key to get into his zone and make sure that he's involved in the play because he likely started out of position on a defensive line. So this is a player with incredibly good hustle. You can tell he loves the game that he plays. He's got a great motor, good power, good pass rush, finesse bag, and I personally think is miles better than a guy like Shamar Stewart, who was his teammate on the other side of the defensive line, who jumped out of the gym, but I thought got beat up on the tape.
Yeah. Real quick, for those who are listening, Nick Bolton has re-signed with the Chiefs. 3 years, 45 million. $30 million of that is guaranteed. So the Chiefs trying to hold on to some pieces there. And then if you haven't seen it this morning, didn't Miles Garrett re-signed with the Browns too as well. So and then the NFL and football never stops at all. This guy, let me see. This is the guy, the kid from Kentucky, um,
You talking about Deion Walker?
D.L. Walker. Yeah, kid from Kentucky.
Ooh,
So
boy,
okay,
don't get me going on him. I'm
yo,
getting stimulated.
I'm just not, I'm not a fan only because I don't. I mean, he's 6'7", 330, 333. I mean, can he? I mean, like, if you want somebody to be there to be a designated pass blocker, like just bat down passes all day. But like, I didn't like. I mean, like, I don't like a guy like that. Like, the motor has to be like it has to be extraordinary because like he kind of went into that. I went into the Senior Bowl and just. I'm not saying got his lunch handed to him, but he didn't move the guy in front of him. I mean, like when you're 6'7", it's hard to get to that part where a low man wins. Like you know what I mean? Like talk about low man wins all the time. Like I mean, a defensive tackle, you gotta be lower. And I just don't see. I mean, like I'm not saying he's not draftable. Like I mean, obviously he's draftable, and somebody will draft him, and they'll see if they can work with him, work with him. But if you get a really good defensive line coach, one of the best guys in the league, then you can work with him. But what are your questions about Deion Walker? Because I didn't see a lot of I didn't see anything that I loved from him post after the season was over, as far as
Yeah.
all the Senior Bowl stuff.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys where I think the numbers get lost. Like he could be 6'6", could be 6'7". I think when I watch him play, he looks 6'7". I think I've seen 333. I've seen 350. I think he probably looks closer to 350. He's a very interesting player. He is got all of the tools needed to be a disruptor in both the run and the pass game. This is a guy who is lined up. Mind you, this guy's a defensive tackle. He's a 6'7",
Yes.
350-pound beefcake. All right, this
Yes.
guy plays standing nine technique. He plays seven tech. He plays nose tackle. There's not a position on the defensive line where I haven't seen Deion Walker line up, which is impressive. It's impressive. I would say though there's a couple knocks or maybe some color that I can kind of add around, some of the things that you mentioned. The pad level. I think, if you look at defensive interior tackles, especially a guy that's pushing 350 pounds, these are guys that are typically not going to have high snap shares. If you look at a guy like Jordan Davis, right? Jordan Davis was very limited in his snap shares his senior year in college, or his last year, I should say senior year, his last year at Georgia, which is why his draft stock fell a little bit because people said, well, he's jumping off the tape when he's involved, but he's not involved very often because he's not on the field very often. Whereas when you look at Deion Walker, like, and to even add to that, Jordan Davis only played 14 snaps and on defense in the Super Bowl, right? So, but you look at a guy like Deion Walker. Deion Walker is a 500 plus snap guy per year, and in one year he even played over 700 snaps. So, Deion Walker is playing a lot more football than a guy like Jordan Davis.
Hmm.
So I think what happens is this guy's 6'7", 350. He's a big boy, and it's very easy for him to kind of start to lose gas and lose steam. And when he loses steam, he stands straight up.
Yep.
And he does not, he just completely loses all of his pad level. He does get moved around a little bit. But if he's not tired and you can keep him fresh, what this guy does is insane. right? To think about a 350-pound defensive tackle lining up at 7 and 9 on a defensive line and rushing the passer and then showing you a finesse bag that enables him to get to the quarterback is wild. He's a relentless football player that, again, if he has his tank and he's got his energy about him, will not give up on a play. And I would say the other thing is a lot of times if a defensive tackle is engaged with a blocker or maybe even getting double teamed, we've seen this. Traditionally this would be like a Vince Wilfork, where Vince Wilfork is getting blocked with one arm and he reaches out the other arm and tackles a ball carrier with one arm. Like I've watched Deion Walker do that several times.
Mhm.
And I would say he has incredible tensile strength. What I mean by that is he's like a metal cable on an aircraft carrier stopping a jet flying across the deck.
Yeah.
Like if you touch him, you stop moving. Okay. So he's got a lot of good things about his game, but I think early
Yeah.
on it might be beneficial for him to slim down, maybe down to that 333 mark that you were talking about, and maybe become a part of a rotation as opposed to being a guy that has to stay on the field for 5 to 700 snaps a year. That makes
That makes
sense.
sense. Makes sense. For college football fans, if you remember Eddie George, he has now signed a 5-year deal to become the new head coach
Bowling
of
Green?
Bowling
Is
Green. He
is
took
he?
the
Oh my
Bowling Green
God.
job. So I think that it's funny because like the players who we thought would be good coaches from growing up,
Yeah.
are actually becoming head coaches. So I thought it was cool. Dion kind of surprised me a little bit that he was a head, that he turned to be turned that he chose to go in the coaching ranks. But I think it's good that Dion did that. But good for Eddie George. Good for Eddie George. I mean that's great. And then Tennessee State was the kind of the building block. I mean I think the HBCUs are becoming coaching building blocks for some of these guys as well too. So good to see. Good to see.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I know anybody. I mean, my late round defensive tackle that I like is Aeneas Peoples. So I like him a lot for Virginia Tech. Do you have a guy who you like before we open up the floor?
Peebles.
I
He's
love
got the
Peoples.
greatest name in the entire
Dude,
draft.
it's a great name. It's a great name. But besides, I
He's got
think
the
I think he can play too. But yeah, it is a great name.
Yeah, yeah. Um yeah, no, I think yeah, just open up the floor, get some people up here and
Yeah.
let's dive into it with them,
Yeah,
man.
so I'm gonna
Love to answer your
yeah,
question.
so this week on this week on my show I'm gonna do I have all 22 access, so I'm gonna do all 22 on Aston Genty, and then Solo and I are gonna do another one on Caleb Johnson too. So like if you want to see some running back play in this draft, we'll have that as well. Get on it early because sometimes YouTube is funny and they try to take it down. So so I will keep it up. I will keep it up as long as I can because some of these schools will some schools ignore it. Some schools will will flag it immediately. Michigan is like any all 22 of the other players on YouTube, so that's always tough. All right. Anybody want to chime in? If not, then we're gonna get to. We're probably gonna go 20 more minutes. So if anybody has any questions or anything you want to add, got people they like on the defensive line. It's kind of more of a defensive line show. Next week we'll hit up corners. Next week. But whatever. Anybody got any thoughts? Shay, Sage, or Razor? Anybody like that? Any guys you like? I mean, and there's not many. There's not any. As long as it's football, we're all good. We can all talk about football, so it doesn't matter draft or NFL. Go ahead. Go ahead, brother.
What's going on, Mr. Nonsense Sage, and everyone in here, the host, Dwayne?
What's up?
Oh man, dude? What the hell is going on with these rookies? I heard a lot about these rookies. These rookies this year is a different breed. So I want you to guys give me for not for defense, but give me. Let me shoot the gun. Let me guess. Top three offensive players that you guys think that's gonna go crazy in the rookie, um, yeah, rookie players. Like for example, like running backs and wide receivers. You can just go anywhere from there. Just let me know your top three players. You guys think that's gonna the players that are gonna do good.
I'm doing something with my kid real quick. So if Nasa, if you want to do something real quick, and let me just set my kid up real quick.
Yeah, you're good, man. No worries. If you want to throw me the co-host so I can
Oh
invite
yeah,
people
that's
up
true. That's
too,
true.
that'll be easier while you're doing your
Yeah.
thing.
And that makes a lot
Hussein.
of sense.
Oh, true oxymoron nonsense, isn't he? But Hussein, I think I think Ashton Genty for me, Solo actually brought this up last night in a casual space that we were having, but like Ashton Genty is probably the most can't miss player in this draft. Solo said it best. I truly do believe that. Ashton Genty in your rookie. I know this is probably fantasy motivated, right? So in your rookie drafts, if it's not two quarterbacks super flex, from a dynasty perspective, you're likely looking at Ashton Genty as the first overall pick. Um, it's interesting. I think, Hussein, until the draft really happens, some of these guys have tremendous talent, but if they don't land in a situation where they get the opportunity share that they need from a fantasy perspective, that kind of makes them a little bit irrelevant, right? And so if we're looking at guys who we can draft at the top end of our draft to fill a position of need or slot right into our lineup, I think it's a little bit tough to try to predict who's going to be who until they get
Yeah.
drafted. But I think another guy that I'd be comfortable with saying is probably going to, at least by the end of the season, work his way into a full time starting role is Marion Hampton from UNC. So man, he can play football. There are some other guys that I really like too, but I would say those two guys are probably really good targets regardless of where they get drafted. So
Yeah.
or anybody else, if you
Yeah, I would
Delane, if
say,
you
I would say, I'm glad you answered that question the way you did because it's like, scheme and where they go is really, really important. So I do think, like if Tet ends up with Thomas in Jacksonville, like Liam Cohen is like as a guy, it's kind of a little weird, but as well as a play caller, he was able to get the ball to pretty much everybody. And if you look at other things, I mean, like they just did a whole, like last year in Tampa Bay, they were able to do a lot of different things. So I would think that would automatically be one of the top two tandems in the NFL. When you have if you get Tet with Thomas, I think Genty. I think to give Solo kind of broke that down too last night in that space. That yes, he probably is. I think his words were like the most bust like the bust free player. Like I mean, it's hard to. I can't imagine a situation where Genty doesn't fit in and doesn't just excel where he goes. Um, my favorite running back in his draft is Caleb. So I love what he did last year at Iowa. So like that's my guy. But like as far as like you can't really go wrong. I think the Bears, if I'm the Bears and they made all these moves on the offensive line, you have Caleb Williams, you have receivers, like that Ben Johnson knows how to use and utilize the running game. I think that's one of the things that underrated about him is that he loves to be physical. And if you get Genty with that group of skill position players and that mindset of running the football, I think that could help Caleb Williams a whole lot. But as far as like anybody else, like we talked about Tat, talked about him. Um, another great another offensive play. I mean, Golden could be a really a guy who could really help an NFL team and just be great in explosive type plays for in rookie seasons. But I gotta see where he goes. I mean, that's the biggest thing for me. I mean, that would be after the draft. You can kind of see a little bit more clear where some of these guys are going to go and like who's going to be the most explosive guys in this draft.
I got
Gotcha,
one for
gotcha.
you. What if Dallas
Okay.
takes Amarian Hampton or Emeka Buka at 12?
Well, I mean, that'd be smart.
Just add one of. I mean, their running back room sucks anyway. Like even if they retain Rico Dowdle, their running game, they're running. They need a star there. You
Yeah,
could see. I think Jameer Gibbs, Saquon Barkley. I think these guys have made it okay for these teams to start thinking about running back early again.
yeah,
And with the influx of running backs that we have coming in now, you could see Caleb Johnson going in the first round. You can see Amarian Hampton going in the first round. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty going in the first round. But there are some other skill position players like Amika or Luther Burton that if they find themselves in the right position in I'd say in the 15 to the 32 range, There's a lot of good offensive teams in that range. And even in the Bears situation, where if Ginty falls to 12, or they decide to go on Hampton, or they decide to go to Hampton or Ginty with their pick at, I think, 11, then you're looking at adding that type of skill position player to a Ben Johnson run offense with Caleb Williams at quarterback, with Roma Dunze and DJ Moore and whatever the corpse of Keenan Allen over there with Cole Kmet. I mean, now you're looking at an offense that's explosive everywhere, like literally everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, and then even though they have Cole Kmet, do they try to go? Do they like Love Lane, or do they like do the Bears like a guy like Tyler Warren, or in the later rounds do they go after somebody like Fannin?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So because
oh my God, Fannin, man.
That's what I'm saying, because because you look at it,
baller.
because like when Laporta plays in Detroit, and like the offense is just it's just imminently better in Detroit when he plays. when he was like when you have him and you have Amon St. Brown and you have Ben Johnson calling plays and both running backs are ready to go, like it's just like, okay, they're scoring 35, we gotta score 36. Like it's really.
And remember, they don't have a mobile quarterback in Detroit.
They do not. They don't have an extender of
So
pass.
he's doing all that with I don't want to say one-dimensional, because I think Jared Goff is a top 6 quarterback in the NFL right now in the way he's played over the last 3 years. However, he's not a mobile guy. So now you have the bootleg. Now you have the mobile stuff, the RPO stuff that you can take advantage of. Like in RPO, Cole Kmet with a quick pass game in the intermediate, it's going to be nice. But also the RPO with a player like Ashton Ginty or Amari Hampton. Like, Jesus Christ, like, get the fuck out of here.
You're gonna see what I think in this draft too. You're gonna see what he thinks about Cole Kmet real quick.
Well, I actually came off mute because I wanted to talk about that a little bit. The one thing I want to say about Tyler Warren is, Tyler Warren obviously had a very high usage percentage last year. He was an exceptional player. He played Wildcat quarterback. He played out of the backfield. Whenever they needed down and gotta have it, the ball was going to Tyler Warren. You knew it. You couldn't stop it. But the thing that I would add about Tyler Warren is like he doesn't have an athletic trait that jumps off the screen. He's a I think he's at the very top end of average athlete, right? So he doesn't have like an elite explosivity trait or elite speed or elite strength or, he's the best run blocker we've ever seen. But he does everything really, really well, and they used him a lot, and everybody knew the ball was going to him, and he was still getting open, right? And so he is a very good football player, but for me, doesn't display any physical trait or characteristic that would justify taking him inside of the top 10, especially if you're the Chicago Bears. I mean, just look at the measurables, right? One is 6'6", the other is 6'5", and some change. One ran a 4.7, the other ran a 4.68, right? And one of the guys is a really good football player, and I think plays a little bit faster than what he ran, and is already a pro and is already on a contract. And like, I just don't think adding Tyler Warren does anything for the Bears today, if not for the future. And I think the Bears are in a unique situation. Like, if you look at Solo brings this up a lot, but if you look at the Commanders last year, they added the quarterback and they added everything else around the quarterback to make that quarterback successful. This is one of the things that Solo talks about ad nauseum in Spaces, especially when, talking about roster reconstruction and roster building, right? So if you look at that, they have the quarterback, they just got the offensive line, the offensive coordinator. They've been adding pieces to the offensive line, and now they're really in a position where they can continue adding to the offense, i.e., adding another receiver after losing Keenan Allen, adding another offensive tackle, finding a center, which is something that they really need, right? There are a couple tweener guys, in this draft from an offensive line perspective that can be considered for that. So I don't think adding Tyler Warren makes the Bears great today. So I just can't see that being a justifiable top 10 pick.
To your point, Ryan Holmes, who does the Put On Raiders podcast with me, he often says, "Is Tyler Warren going to be able to get vertical in the National Football League?" Like he says that he says that a lot, and I don't know if he can get vertical like that in the National Football League. Like I just don't. Does he have that? Because like a lot of that stuff, that seam stuff he does is getting separation. I don't know if he can get that separation. I'm not sure. If he, I don't. He's not. He doesn't seem like he's not a plus athlete,
And
but he does.
exactly.
But he does do a lot of shit good. Like I mean, he'd help an offense, I think. But like especially on third down, they're playing zone. Just hit him real
Right.
quick. Like what I mean, like just sit down and get a first down. But I don't know
Right.
if he's going to be like if you're going to draft a guy, in the top 10, like what I mean, he has to be like a Brock Bowers type. Like what I mean, you
Right.
got to be
I
a
agree.
plus athlete. You know what I mean?
I agree. And look, he's gonna be all this to say, Tyler Warren can absolutely be an 80 catch tight end in the NFL. You don't have to be a vertical stretcher in order to be like considered
Is he better
like
than Kittle?
worthy.
Is he better than Kittle? Like
No,
coming out.
I don't think he's. I don't think he's the same. I
Yeah.
don't think he's as good of an athlete as Kittle.
Kittle. No, I agree.
So, but the good thing for tight ends is you need to know how to block. He knows how to do that. You need to be smart. I think he is. And you need to understand how to get open and sit in zone and be available on, down and gotta have it. And he's a smart, instinctual football player that, despite the fact that he's not a plus athlete, finds a way to get open often. So, like,
100%.
look, I know we're trashing him, but the only reason that we're doing that is to help you understand he's probably not a top 10 guy, but he can still be an 80 catch tight end in the NFL, and that's okay. So it's just kind of understanding who it is that you're drafting or talking about or evaluating from a different standpoint.
Cool. 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 Anybody else? Jump in. We got about 7 minutes left. Jump in.
Personally, I've thought that Colston Loveland was the best tight end coming out for a while now.
Yep.
I think he's the most complete tight end in this coming out, in my opinion. I think he plays much faster than he tests for. I think he's got good hands. I think he's got good run blocking ability. I think he's going to develop into an all world tight end. I really like Colston Loveland.
And do you know why he's not being talked about over Tyler Warren? Because he didn't take Wildcat snaps. You get what I'm trying to say? I'm being facetious, but it
Is that
just
the
goes
Brock
No,
to
yeah,
show
Bowers?
yeah.
you,
Taking
right?
three
It just
handoffs
goes to
out of the backfield in an entire season, and people think that you can use him as an H back.
Yes.
right, right.
Well,
It just goes to show you that there are a lot of
Gruden would have did that. If
a
Gruden
lot of
was here.
highlight warriors out there that create narratives that pick up steam in an online information access age, and sometimes it sticks, and I think in Tyler Warren's case it stuck a little bit.
And also, Colson Loveland had about 35 balls go over his head this year, too. That doesn't help him at all.
Oh, yeah, a little quarterback issue in Michigan this year, huh? That is true. He
Tell you
definitely
what,
did.
they definitely did a good job of addressing that, huh?
I mean, hey, listen, hey, you got Bar still came through for him. Bar still came through for him. He came through for him. It helps when when a rich guy is your that's his favorite college football team. But they got it done. They still flipped him from LSU to Michigan. So it makes sense. He's from. I think the kid's from Michigan anyway. He should have been on Michigan's radar anyway. So it should have been it should have been an easy recruitment. Anxious, anxious to see how he plays because I think he's playing from day one. I don't think he's sitting the year one at all. So it'll be interesting to see. It's always interesting to see a young quarterback jump from high school to the redshirt freshman. Go ahead, Sue Hussein.
Wait, hold on, man. I think, am I reading this correctly? Did Miles Garrett just got
Yes,
extended
Yeah, he
Miles Garrett.
re-upped after saying
Yeah,
it wasn't about the money.
yeah.
in the
Miles
Browns,
Garrett
right?
signed.
He's playing for the Browns.
Yeah, Miles Garrett and Nick Bolton signed
Nice.
today.
Gee, holy
Yeah,
smokes, man, that's
yeah.
crazy. I'm looking at it right now. It says something about like extension averages 40 million per year, includes 123.5 million guaranteed money.
It's
That's crazy.
always about the
Holy
paper, man. It's
smokes,
always follow the paper. Always follow the
God.
paper. Always follow the paper.
We're still like now. Who's the like one of like the free agent defensive players that's out there? Because I know you have maybe Trey Hendrickson. Is he still available or?
Trey
Well,
Henderson. I thought
who's
he
not?
got he got told that he can look for a trade, right? Or is he a free agent?
Who's that?
No,
Trey Hendrickson.
he's given permission to seek a
No, he's
trade.
definitely not a free agent. No, he's been
Yeah, I
given
was gonna
permission
say.
to seek a trade.
So from a defensive line perspective, because I'm sure you heard who's saying that you guys released Javon Hargrave, who you just signed. You know what's funny about the 49ers is the
Well, they didn't
49ers
just sign him; they
seemingly,
signed him 2 years ago.
yeah, a couple years ago,
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a 4-year, $84 million deal. You figure, I mean, that was a
Well,
big
they most
commitment.
likely used up all his guaranteed money, right? This was a cap saving process, right? So he was like,
Yeah,
I think he only had like, what did he have? Like probably 45 million guaranteed, maybe 50 in that deal.
not sure, not
This was
sure.
the Debo. This was the Debo thing. You knew he was going to be gone this offseason because his
Yeah,
guarantees had run out, and they're going to save money by moving him. I expected
yeah.
Hargrave to be gone. I expected Debo to be gone, and then Trent Williams is the next one that I expect either to be gone this year or next year.
Yeah.
Because after they pay Brock Purdy, it's about to get ugly
Well, they
over there.
extended him last year too, so they added on to his guarantees, unfortunately. So I'm not sure. You have to take a look on over the cap to see where he
I will. Yeah, I'll
falls
check it
now.
out for sure.
But they just gave him extra money last because he pulled the same shit last year. Go ahead, JX.
No, I'll keep raising my torch for this guy as far as impact free agents. I really do believe
Yeah.
Trayvon Moehrig has another level to hit. You know,
He's preaching to the choir on that one.
yeah.
I
Like
totally
I said,
agree.
uh, I know I said yesterday when we were in Jack's space, I was like, he feels like he'll go to the Chiefs and become like an all pro. And maybe it doesn't work for them cap wise, but I just feel like he's going to go to another team and just hit that next level. Something like like an Xavier McKinney type extension. Just a different system that can highlight, his elite traits. And I really think he has another ceiling to hit, and we could be looking at Trevon Moehrig a different way next year.
That's a weird one to let hit
Nick
free
Bolton
agency.
re-upped as well. For those who don't know,
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
weird one for the Raiders to have hit free agency in my
yeah.
mind.
I never expected that to be the case.
We're getting close. I mean, if it's not midnight tonight, then I think Moore hits free agency. You
Yeah,
not
know?
it's not a guy I would ever want to hit free agency because there's going to be a lot of
No.
suitors.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a
I
lot
think
of
he's gonna
suitors.
get slightly. I think he's gonna get probably slightly overpaid, but I think if you can get a deal done tonight, before legal tampering starts tomorrow, like, you might be able to, keep him on a value deal. But
Everybody gets overpaid
yeah,
in
it's
free
hard.
agency too. Almost everybody.
But
True,
I gotta
true,
say,
true.
it's hard to imagine paying Trayvon Moehrig like more than $14 million average salary per year. And I think if he hits free agency, he's probably looking at like 15, 16, maybe 17, you know? Um, that's just the unfortunate circumstance around it. Corner, by the way, talking about Trayvon Moehrig leaving the Raiders, but there's a lot of defensive backs available. Javon Holland, Justin Reed. I do think Harrison Smith is probably going to retire. I don't think we're going to see Harrison Smith in another uniform, and I wouldn't be surprised if like there's a couple safeties in this draft, like Micah Fitzpatrick had a little bit of a downturn in production. I'd have to imagine by now his guarantees are running pretty low. I wouldn't be surprised if a guy like him, potentially becomes like, a cap casualty if the Steelers feel like they're getting up against the cap and there are some other guys they want to go after. So there's some defensive backs available. Byron Murphy, Asante Samuel, Carlton Davis. I think is going to be scheme specific.
DJ
He's a
Reed.
street. Yeah, DJ Reed. Oh my God, yeah, DJ
Jesus.
Reed. DJ Reed's on everyone's wish list. Charvarius Ward,
It's
Byron
gonna make a
Murphy,
bag,
right?
bro. I would love to
Yeah, he's gonna.
re-sign Trayvon Merrick tonight and then sign DJ Reed tomorrow. Like that would be ultimate for the Raiders.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that the Steelers are very interested in Nate Hobbs. I said, yeah, have at it.
He's
I
a
mean,
Interesting.
he's a Pittsburgh defensive back if I've ever seen one. Him and Trayvon Merrick are two guys that I could see going there.
Yeah. He's a little bit of a streaky player too, but I don't like considering where he was he undrafted or was he
no.
No, he
fourth
was
round?
drafted in the fourth round,
Fourth round, right. Okay, so I was right. Okay.
A
fourth
good
or fifth
slot
So
round.
corner, just a good
considering
slot
where he
corner,
was drafted,
just
well, he
doesn't play
played
a lot.
outside for you guys too, though. I thought early on he played
They
outside,
tried to put
but
him
he moved
outside, but
into
he
slot.
primarily moved inside, and that's where he excelled at.
Okay, because he was streaky on the outside, if I recall,
Yeah, he was.
right?
He was the
Yeah.
way better in nickel corner.
Yeah,
Well, and
his
he's
tackling is incredible. So in the
he's a
run game,
big
he's a
nickel.
great tackler.
Yeah, he
He's
was
a
drafted in the
big
5th
nickel,
round,
no?
so not the 4th, the 5th.
Fifth
Yeah,
round. But he's a bigger nickel. Fair to say.
yeah, he is. He is. He's a
He's on
physical.
the
He's a
top
big
end of.
physical corner. He's like 6'1". I think he's over 200 pounds or close to it. Like he's a
Yeah,
physical guy.
yeah. I thought for a while you guys had something with him, but I just, he's probably gonna get overpaid and is
I feel
probably
like
not
Nate
worth
Hobbs is one of the guys
$200.
that had the potential, but got placed in a bad situation with the Raiders and the fluctuation and all that they dealt with over his tenure probably really, really hurt him
Good for
more
a
than it
fresh
hurt other
start.
players. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's a fresh start guy for me. He's like, hey, he's
yeah.
going to succeed in a fresh, like, what if he signs with Kansas City? Like, I imagine he's going to be a really good player for them. Or if he signs with Pittsburgh, or if he goes down and plays with a
What
really
about the
good defensive coordinator.
Vikings?
The Vikings would also
Like
be good
Brian
for Brian
Flores,
Oh, he
Flores.
would.
Like, that would also be
Him.
great.
Oh my God, him and
Patrick
He
Graham,
would
Brian
be
Flores,
excellent. He
right?
would be excellent in
Yeah,
Minnesota.
yeah.
Zadarius Smith
Just got released.
just got
Yeah,
released from the Lions as well.
Yeah, I thought.
but
I didn't think he was coming back either.
Yeah.
But Hussein, I know you asked about like some, I don't know if it was defensive line, but a lot of defensive linemen that are going to be available in free agency too. I think Milton Williams leads the defensive interior class, probably along with Jonathan Allen, right? Jonathan Allen, who just got released by the Commanders. Hargrave's back in the pool. One of my favorites, but he's 39 years old. He's the gift that keeps on giving, the guy that won't die. Yours truly, Calais Campbell. He will be available in free agency as
Love
well.
him. Love
He
him.
Love Calais.
love
Love
him,
Calais
Like,
Campbell.
love
I wanted
him.
Calais
I want
Campbell when
to.
he's been too old now for 7 straight years, and he's
Yeah,
never been
Oh
too
my
old.
God,
that's great. That's great.
he's
He's
so
great. He's great.
good.
He's great. He's great.
He's so good.
Malik Collins just got released 10 minutes ago by the Niners. That's
That's
another
okay.
10 million.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Doesn't it feel like the Niners are always in the market for defensive line, or is it just me?
Oh yeah, they always are.
It's like every single year. Anyways, Josh Sweat, Joey Boza, Khalil Mack, Hassan Reddick. One of my favorites. I know you guys have your opinion about it, and I'm curious to hear it. Malcolm Kuntz, great football player, really good football player.
He's gonna be gone. Looks like. I mean, because look. I mean, like the time is now. Like I'm not sure why. The tampering time is coming, and
And he's coming off of an injury.
yeah. So it's
Yeah,
tough.
Spillane, Kuntz, Nate Hobbs, Trayvon Merrick, all free agents right now.
Yeah.
Bro,
Like literally in 12 hours.
Yeah.
Spillane is probably my favorite true linebacker target in free agency. He is such a good football player. Like I didn't watch the Raiders last year, right? So you figure I watched Patriots games or whatever was local if the Patriots weren't on, right? And then I would have Red Zone going on in the background. And I kid you not, every single time Red Zone switched over to the Raiders and the Raiders were on defense, Jack Spillane was involved in a collision on defense. Like he
Robert,
was all over the. I'm sorry, Robert Spillane. My bad. Um, he was all over the field. I'm surprised to see you guys let him walk.
well, the thing is he's been vastly overplaying his little minimal deals that he's been getting from the Raiders. I mean, when he got signed from the Steelers, I think he only got signed for like a 2-year, $11 million deal, and then I
Yeah,
think he
man.
re-upped 1 year to get paid a little bit more. But if he hits free agency market now, I think he'd probably be a $10 million linebacker. So that's
Okay.
probably why he's
Yeah.
probably like, okay, well, I don't want to re-sign at $8 or $9 million a year with the Raiders. I would really like to see what I could get. I think the Patriots would jump at the idea to get Spillane. I really do.
Yeah.
I think the
He's
Patriots
fit.
need a
He's fit.
linebacker.
He's fit. He's fit.
The
He's
other
fit.
one is the Tampa Bay. I could see Tampa Bay going after him and letting him Sippy play beside Levante David for the last couple of years of Levante David's career. Like that would be a signing that I could see happen. Because they spent all offseason retaining a lot of their pieces. They're going to get at least one of these defensive guys to add to that defense.
Yeah. All right. So guys, I want to end this because I want to clip this, edit it, and put it on YouTube on my YouTube channel. So because I think this is a great conversation about football. So I definitely don't want to go like usually like that. So if you want to open up another space, we can definitely continue to talk. But right now I'm gonna end it here. 11 o'clock on Sundays on the Pacific time, 2 o'clock on the East Coast. Next week we will do let's do corners and safeties next week. If that's cool, nonsense, and then we'll continue the conversation. And I'm happy we got this first one done, and then we'll be with you until the draft. And then Solo and I will do a live draft, so you can get to see our live reactions to Ask the Genty at 6. and then, and we'll take it from there as far as that goes. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us here on Draft Central. See you next time.